I arrived at Sentinel Defense Solutions at 6:30 that morning to find two security guards waiting at my office door. The CEO stood behind them, his face stone cold. My 15 years of loyalty ended in 90 seconds. Fired for refusing to train his unqualified nephew on classified systems. As security escorted me through the lobby, colleagues watched in stunned silence. The guards took my badge while I maintained perfect composure, because beneath my calm exterior was one crucial fact they had overlooked. I secretly owned the patents to their $500 million cybersecurity platform, the same platform protecting major defense contracts. The truth behind my quiet confidence would soon shake the foundations of the company that just discarded me like yesterday's trash. I grew up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, where most kids followed their parents into the steel mills or retail jobs. My father left when I was 8, leaving my mother to raise me alone in our tiny 2-bedroom house. Mom worked double shifts at the local diner, leaving me alone with our ancient desktop computer. That old machine became my gateway to a different future. While other kids played outside, I taught myself coding, staying up late into the night fascinated by what I could create with just lines of text. By 16, I was helping local businesses build their websites for extra cash. Mom saved every penny toward my college fund, but when she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer during my senior year, those savings disappeared into medical bills. I watched her fight through treatments while I applied for every scholarship available, eventually securing enough to attend Penn State. College was a blur of classes, part-time jobs, and weekend visits home to help Mom through her treatments. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, studying computer science while my wealthier classmates partied. The sacrifice paid off when I graduated with honors, and Mom was there, in remission, beaming with pride as I crossed the stage. Landing an interview at Sentinel Defense Solutions felt like winning the lottery. They typically recruited from Ivy League schools, not state universities. I spent 3 days preparing, studying everything about their systems and approach. When the interviewer asked about fixing a particularly complex security vulnerability, I didn't just answer. I pulled out my laptop and demonstrated a solution I'd coded the night before. 2 days later, they offered me an entry-level position. The salary was modest by industry standards, but it was my foot in the door of a respected cybersecurity firm. Mom cried when I told her, saying Dad would have been proud if he'd stuck around to see it. My first years at Sentinel were a steep learning curve. I worked longer hours than anyone, absorbing everything I could about defense systems. While colleagues left for happy hours, I stayed behind studying security protocols. Some called me a workaholic. I called it investing in myself. By my 5th year, I'd been promoted twice and given my own small team. That's when I first conceived of what would later become the AEGIS platform. At that time, defense cybersecurity relied on reactive measures addressing vulnerabilities after they were discovered. I envisioned something different, an adaptive system that could predict and neutralize threats before they materialized. When I pitched the concept to upper management, they were skeptical but gave me a modest budget to explore it. Those next 5 years defined my career. I worked 16-hour days, often sleeping on the office couch. My small apartment collected dust while I poured every ounce of creativity into building Aegis from scratch. My team grew to 12 people, brilliant minds, who believed in the vision. We became a family of sorts, celebrating small victories with late-night pizza and supporting each other through setbacks. Tom handled network architecture, Amanda specialized in encryption, and Jake became our threat analysis guru. We complemented each other perfectly. What began as a side project eventually became Sentinel's flagship product. When we finally demonstrated Aegis to the Pentagon, their security officials called it revolutionary. Within months, contracts poured in. The company's valuation skyrocketed from $10 million to over $500 million. I watched from the sidelines as executives took credit at press conferences for what my team had built. I didn't mind staying out of the spotlight. I was never comfortable with public speaking anyway. The satisfaction came from knowing what we'd created was protecting critical infrastructure and potentially saving lives. Mom always taught me that pride should come from the work itself, not the recognition. What no one at the company realized was that during those years of development, I had quietly secured patents for key components of the AEGIS system under my own name. It wasn't deceptive. I'd submitted all the proper paperwork through appropriate channels. The company's legal team had simply failed to notice that while Sentinel owned the AEGIS brand, I personally held patents on the core technology that made it function. It was never about money or leverage. It was about protection. I'd seen too many talented developers pushed aside once their innovations were complete. The patents were my insurance policy, filed with meticulous documentation and time-stamped records of every breakthrough. I never imagined I'd need to use them until the day Travis showed up. Travis Woodward arrived on a Tuesday morning, wearing designer jeans and a smirk that instantly set my teeth on edge. He was 24, with carefully tousled hair and the confident swagger of someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything in his life. "Jillian, meet my nephew," said Gerald Woodward, our CEO, with his hand on Travis's shoulder. "He'll be joining your team as a special advisor on digital engagement." I shook Travis's hand while trying to process what was happening. Gerald had never visited our secure floor without prior notice, let alone brought family members into restricted areas. "Travis has quite the following on social media," Gerald continued, beaming with uncharacteristic pride. "Over 3 million followers on TikTok. He'll bring a fresh perspective to our digital strategy." "What digital strategy?" "We built defense systems, not influencer campaigns." I smiled politely while internally calculating how many security protocols were being broken by having an unauthorized civilian in our workspace. "Great to meet you," Travis said, already filming a video on his phone. "This place is so retro cool, like a movie set." I gently explained that recording devices weren't permitted in our area due to the classified nature of our work. Travis laughed as if I'd told a joke, while Gerald pulled me aside. "Travis needs to understand our business from the ground up," he said quietly. "I want you to personally oversee his training. Show him everything." "Everything?" I asked, unable to hide my concern. "Sir, most of what we do requires security clearances that take months to obtain." Gerald waved away my objection. "I've expedited his clearance. Family privilege has its advantages." That first week with Travis was excruciating. He showed up late, spent hours on his phone, and asked questions that revealed his complete lack of technical knowledge. When I tried to explain basic encryption principles, he interrupted to show me viral videos he'd created. This one got 6 million views, he boasted, showing a clip of himself pretending to hack into a government system. People love this secret spy stuff. "That's not actually how any of this works," I explained patiently. "And we should be careful about the messaging around cybersecurity." "Whatever," Travis replied, already bored. "The point is to get views and engagement. Reality is boring." I might have tolerated his attitude, if not for what happened the following week. During a routine security scan, our system flagged unusual social media activity. Someone had posted images that potentially contained classified information visible in the background. It took seconds to trace the posts to Travis's accounts behind him in his office. Selfies were whiteboards with sensitive information. In another, A classified document was partially visible on his desk. He'd been broadcasting our secure environment to millions of followers. I documented everything and requested an urgent meeting with Gerald. He kept me waiting for 2 hours before ushering me into his office with obvious irritation. "This better be important, Jillian." I was in budget meetings all afternoon. I presented the evidence as professionally as possible, explaining the security implications without directly accusing his nephew of wrongdoing. Gerald listened with growing impatience. "These are harmless posts, Jillian. No one is zooming in on whiteboards in the background." "Sir, we've already identified 3 instances where classified information was clearly visible," I countered, showing him the enhanced images our security team had prepared. "This could violate our government contracts." Gerald's expression hardened. "Are you suggesting my nephew is a security risk?" "I'm suggesting that anyone without proper training might accidentally compromise sensitive information. It's my job to flag these concerns." He dismissed me with assurances he would handle it. The next day, Travis arrived with a new title, Director of Innovation. He now reported directly to Gerald rather than me, though I was still expected to train him on all aspects of the AEGIS system. Over the following weeks, Travis inserted himself into key meetings and began taking credit for improvements my team had developed. In one presentation to military clients, he presented our latest security features as his brainchild, while I sat silently fuming in the back row. Worse, he began asking for administrative access to all components of the AEGIS platform, including classified modules that protected active military operations. When I hesitated, he'd simply say, "Uncle Gerald wants me to have full understanding of our capabilities." The situation reached breaking point when I discovered Travis had been added to an upcoming Pentagon briefing about next-generation defense systems, a meeting that had taken me years to be included in. When I questioned this decision, Gerald called me into his office. "Travis represents the future of this company," he said without preamble. "I need you to provide him complete access to all AEGIS systems and documentation before the Pentagon meeting next week." "Sir, some of those systems protect active military personnel," I explained. "Travis doesn't have the background to understand the implications of—" Gerald cut me off. "That's why you're going to teach him. Everything. Every password, every backdoor, every proprietary algorithm. Consider this a direct order." I took a deep breath. "May I ask why this is suddenly so urgent?" His eyes narrowed. "You may not. This company operates on a need-to-know basis, and all you need to know is that Travis requires comprehensive understanding of all systems you've developed." That evening, I stayed late reviewing security logs, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. An incoming email notification caught my attention, sent accidentally to a group list instead of specific recipients. It was from Gerald to the board of directors, outlining succession planning. My blood ran cold as I read. "Travis has been making excellent progress understanding our proprietary systems. Once the knowledge transfer is complete, we can transition Jillian out and position Travis as the technical genius behind AEGIS for the Northcom contract renewal. His youth and social media presence will modernize our image, while we retain all institutional knowledge." They were planning to replace me with Travis and erase my contribution entirely. 15 years of my life treated as nothing more than knowledge transfer. I closed the email and sat in my darkened office for a long time. By dawn, I had made my decision. Some principles weren't negotiable. I would not be complicit in handing over classified defense systems to an unqualified person, regardless of whose nephew he was. When Gerald called that evening with his ultimatum train, Travis on everything, or face consequences. My answer was simple and final. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't do that. It violates security protocols and my own professional ethics. His response was cold. Then be prepared for what comes next. I spent that night backing up personal files and reviewing the patent documentation I'd filed years earlier. I knew what tomorrow would bring, but I never imagined it would happen quite so publicly. The security guards flanking my office door at 6:30 the next morning weren't a surprise. Gerald's presence behind them was. He wanted to witness my humiliation firsthand. Jillian Parker, your employment with Sentinel Defense Solutions is terminated, effective immediately. He announced loudly enough for nearby early arrivals to hear. Your refusal to comply with direct management instructions constitutes insubordination and grounds for dismissal. The guard stepped forward with an empty box. Please collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. My hands didn't shake as I placed my family photos and a few mementos into the box. My desk plant, a spider plant that had survived years of neglect, wouldn't fit. I left it for Amanda, who had always admired its resilience. The walk through the office was designed to humiliate. By now, more colleagues had arrived, watching wide-eyed as security escorted me through the open floor plan. Some averted their eyes, others stared in shock. Tom half rose from his desk as if to intervene, but I subtly shook my head. This wasn't his battle to fight. At the main entrance, the head of security held out his hand for my badge. I surrendered it without comment, maintaining eye contact until he looked away first. The heavy glass doors closed behind me with finality. 15 years of my life, sealed off in an instant. The drive home passed in a blur. My apartment felt foreign when I entered a place I'd been using primarily to sleep and shower between workdays. Dust had gathered on surfaces, and the refrigerator contained only condiments and a carton of expired milk. I placed my small box of possessions on the kitchen counter and stood there, suddenly untethered. The silence was interrupted by my phone. Tom, calling from the bathroom at work where he couldn't be overheard. "What the hell happened?" he demanded, voice tight with anger. Gerald's called an all-hands meeting to announce Travis as the new director of cybersecurity operations. My laugh came out harsher than intended. That was quick. This is insane, Gil. Everyone knows he can't tell a firewall from a hole in the ground. Half the team is talking about quitting. Don't, I said firmly. Don't sacrifice your careers. Not yet. After promising to call later, Tom hung up. More messages followed Amanda, Jake, others from my team, expressing outrage and support. I appreciated their loyalty, but couldn't focus on responses. My mind was already calculating next steps. By noon, the first email from Sentinel's legal department arrived, reminding me of my non-disclosure agreements and non-compete clauses. By 2, a second, more threatening message followed, warning of severe legal consequences should I contact any Sentinel clients or employees. By 4, a courier delivered a formal cease and desist letter. They were scared. Good. I spent the afternoon setting up security on my personal devices and creating encrypted backups of important documents. The patents were already safely filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but I needed to ensure my access to that documentation remained uncompromised. Around 6, Amanda called, her voice barely above a whisper. Travis is destroying everything, Gil. He deleted an entire security protocol because he thought it was redundant. We had to restore from backups. And he's taking credit for the adaptive response algorithm you built. There's a press release going out tomorrow announcing him as the visionary behind AG. My stomach clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Document everything, Amanda. Every mistake, every claim, every change he makes. Use your personal email, not company systems. After we hung up, I opened my laptop to check news feeds and froze. There he was, Travis Woodward, smiling from the Sentinel website, described as the innovative architect behind our revolutionary AEGIS platform. The photo showed him standing proudly beside hardware I had designed, claiming credit for years of my work. Something inside me broke. The careful composure I'd maintained cracked, and I found myself sobbing on my kitchen floor, overwhelmed by the injustice. 15 years of sacrifice, missing family holidays, postponing relationships, even delaying visits to my mother during her cancer recurrence, all erased in a day. Replaced by an entitled kid who had contributed nothing but security breaches. I allowed myself 30 minutes of despair before washing my face with cold water. Self-pity wouldn't solve anything. Action would. The next few days blurred together. I barely slept or ate. When I did sleep, I jolted awake from nightmares where I was frantically trying to explain complex code to Travis while soldiers died because of his mistakes. I ignored calls from friends concerned about my isolation. What could I tell them? That I'd been erased from my own life's work? On the 4th day after my firing, my specialized phone rang, the secure line used only for sensitive government communications. I had forgotten to surrender it during my hasty departure, and apparently, Sentinel had forgotten to deactivate it. Miss Parker. The voice belonged to Colonel Frank Matthews from the Pentagon's Cyber Command, a straight-talking career military officer who had always treated me with respect. Interesting changes at Sentinel. Care to enlighten me off the record? I chose my words carefully. The company is transitioning to new leadership in the cybersecurity division. Cut the PR speak, Parker. I've sat through 2 meetings with this Travis kid. He couldn't explain basic encryption if his life depended on it. What's really going on? I'm afraid I'm bound by various legal agreements, Colonel. His sigh carried through the secure connection. Look, I've worked with you for 7 years. The Aegis system protects our people in the field. If something's compromising that protection, I need to know. His words pierced my fog of self-absorption. This wasn't just about my career or reputation. Real lives depended on Aegis functioning properly. The system is designed with multiple redundancies, I assured him. But it requires proper maintenance and understanding. And does this nephew have that understanding? My silence answered his question. That's what I thought, Matthews said. You should know we're conducting a full security review of all Sentinel systems and contracts. In the meantime, I suggest you protect what's rightfully yours. The Pentagon values the real innovators, not the figureheads. He ended the call, leaving me staring at the phone. Protect what's rightfully yours. The words echoed in my mind, triggering something I'd been too despondent to consider. I spent the rest of the evening pulling out old files and documentation. Somewhere in my apartment was the folder containing my original patent applications, the ones filed in my name, not Sentinel's. I found it shortly after midnight, buried in a storage box from 3 apartments ago. As I reviewed the documents, a new emotion replaced my despair: determination. I might have lost my job, but I still owned the intellectual foundation of everything Sentinel was selling. It was time to remind them of that fact. The law offices of Harriet Winters occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. The reception area featured muted colors, comfortable seating, and absolutely no indication that this woman was one of the most feared intellectual property attorneys in the country. Harriet herself defied expectations, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair in a practical bob, and reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed my documentation in silence for 40 minutes while I sat anxiously across from her desk. "Well," she said finally, removing her glasses, "this is quite the situation you've created, Miss Parker." "Is my position legally sound?" I asked. A smile spread slowly across her face. "Your position is exceptional. These patents are ironclad, properly filed, and unambiguously in your name. Sentinel's legal team made an elementary oversight by not ensuring company ownership of core technology. Their employment agreements cover general intellectual property, but not specifically these patents." I exhaled for what felt like the first time since entering her office. "So, what does this mean practically?" "Practically? It means Sentinel Defense Solutions is currently licensing and selling technology they don't own to clients including the United States government. They're misrepresenting ownership to investors, partners, and customers." Her eyes gleamed. "They're in an extremely vulnerable position. What do you recommend?" "That depends on what you want, Miss Parker. Revenge? Money? Your job back? Something else entirely?" The question caught me off guard. What did I want? "I want recognition for my work," I began slowly. "I want to protect the integrity of systems that people depend on, and I want to ensure no one like me gets erased again." Harriet nodded approvingly. "Those are goals worth fighting for. Here's what we'll do." Over the next 2 hours, we crafted a strategy. No immediate legal action that would trigger Sentinel's army of corporate lawyers. Instead, we would gather evidence, strengthen my position, and prepare for the right moment to act. I left her office with a clear plan and the first glimmer of hope since my firing. Back home, I created a secure communication channel for my former team members to contact me. Several had already reached out through encrypted messaging apps, offering information and support. Their loyalty touched me deeply. Jake was the first to send substantial intelligence. Travis convinced Gerald to fast-track a system update without proper testing, multiple clients reporting glitches. Amanda followed with more troubling news. Defense contract review meeting was a disaster. Travis couldn't answer basic questions about system architecture. Pentagon officials looked concerned. Most alarming was Tom's update. Security audit found unauthorized access to classified modules from Travis's credentials, investigating whether deliberate breach or carelessness. I compiled everything methodically, building a case file that documented not just my patent ownership, but the growing evidence of mismanagement under Travis's leadership. 2 weeks after my firing, a secure, encrypted email arrived from an unfamiliar address. The message contained only a link to a financial news site and the words, "You should see this." The article announced Sentinel's plans to sell to Criterion Global, a larger defense contractor, for $1.2 billion more than double the company's previous valuation. Gerald Woodward stood beaming in the accompanying photo, with Travis prominently positioned beside him as the technical genius driving Sentinel's remarkable growth. The deal was predicated on Criterion's desire to acquire the AEGIS platform technology that Sentinel didn't actually own. I forwarded the article to Harriet, who called within minutes. "This changes everything," she said without preamble. "They're not just using your technology, they're selling it outright without your consent. We need to move faster." The next day, I received another anonymous communication internal documents showing that Travis had been given admin access to all security systems, including classified defense protocols. Accompanying logs showed alarming pattern of system vulnerabilities following his modifications. Most disturbing was an internal security alert that had been quickly buried, a potential data breach in a system protecting deployed special operations teams. The report noted unusual access patterns that had been dismissed as routine maintenance on Travis's authority. This wasn't just about my career anymore. If Travis's incompetence was compromising systems that protected military personnel, lives could be at risk. I spent that night documenting everything and preparing a detailed briefing. The next morning, I placed a call to Colonel Matthews using the secure line. "I need 15 minutes of your time," I said when he answered. "It concerns the security of deployed personnel." His response was immediate. "My office. 800 tomorrow. Come through the south entrance. No electronic devices." The Pentagon's imposing structure never failed to humble me. After clearing multiple security checkpoints, I was escorted to Matthew's sparse office, where he waited with 2 other officers I didn't recognize. "These are Colonels Rivera and Washington," Matthews said by way of introduction. "They oversee units currently protected by Aegis systems. What you say to me, you can say to them." I opened my folder and laid out everything: the patents, Travis's incompetence, the security vulnerabilities, and the pending sale to Criterion. The 3 officers listened without interruption. When I finished, Matthews exchanged glances with his colleagues before speaking. "We've noticed degradation in system performance but couldn't pinpoint the cause. Your explanation fills in several gaps." He leaned forward. "What are you planning to do about this?" "Assert my ownership rights and ensure the system is properly maintained." "And if Sentinel fights back?" "I have documentation proving I own the core patents, but I need more evidence of mismanagement and potential security breaches." Colonel Rivera spoke for the first time. "That would require inside access you no longer have. Unless," Colonel Washington added thoughtfully, "there was a formal security audit triggered by concerns from authorized clients." Matthews nodded slowly. "Such an audit would require comprehensive system access and documentation review, conducted by qualified independent experts." The implication was clear. They could create an opportunity for me to legally gain access to Sentinel's systems. "How soon could such an audit be arranged?" I asked. "Given potential security implications for deployed personnel." Matthews checked his watch, as if considering a grocery run rather than a major military decision. "I believe we could have paperwork processed by end of day." As I left the Pentagon, my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. "Emergency, all hands called. Something about a major security audit from Pentagon. Travis is panicking." I smiled for the first time in weeks. The pieces were falling into place. That evening, my investigation took an unexpected turn when Tom sent an encrypted file containing financial records he'd discovered while helping the accounting department prepare for the Criterion acquisition. "Found these while pulling system logs," his message read. "Not my area of expertise, but looks suspicious." The documents showed a pattern of funds being diverted from Sentinel's operational accounts to offshore holdings traced to a shell company. The beneficial owner of that company? Gerald Woodward. The CEO had been systematically siphoning money from his own company for years, disguising it as consulting fees and technical services. The amounts totaled millions, small enough to avoid immediate detection in a company Sentinel's size, but substantial when aggregated. I sent the financial records to Harriet with a simple question. "Does this change our strategy?" Her response came quickly. "Significantly. This gives us leverage beyond the patents. Financial fraud of this nature could trigger criminal charges, not just civil penalties." My plan was expanding beyond reclaiming my intellectual property. I now had evidence of patent infringement, security negligence, and financial fraud. But I needed one more piece: public exposure that couldn't be buried or dismissed. An opportunity presented itself in the form of an invitation to the upcoming Cyber Defense Summit, where Sentinel was scheduled to showcase the next generation of the AEGIS platform, with Travis as the featured presenter. I hadn't planned to attend. The thought of watching Travis take credit for my work was too painful. But now, with my strategy taking shape, the summit became the perfect stage for my countermove. Harriet secured me a speaking slot on a panel about intellectual property and defense systems, an irony not lost on either of us. The panel was scheduled immediately before Sentinel's presentation in the same hall. As the summit approached, more concerning information flowed from my former team. Travis had pushed through system changes that removed key security protocols he deemed unnecessary, despite warnings from experienced engineers. Multiple clients had reported system failures and unusual access logs. Most critically, the Pentagon's security audit had identified significant vulnerabilities in classified modules, the same modules Travis had modified against recommendations. Everything was aligning for a confrontation that would determine not just my future, but the security of systems protecting countless lives. I spent sleepless nights preparing, reviewing documents, and rehearsing what I would say when the moment came. The night before the summit, I received one final piece of intelligence from Amanda. Criterion executives attending tomorrow's presentation. Gerald pushing Travis to promise capabilities the system can't deliver. This is your moment. She was right. After weeks of building my case and gathering evidence, tomorrow would change everything. I packed my briefcase with copies of patents, security reports, financial records, and system logs, physical evidence that couldn't be denied or deleted. Whatever happened at the summit, Sentinel would never be the same, and neither would I. The conference center buzzed with activity as cybersecurity professionals from government, military, and private sectors gathered for the annual Cyber Defense Summit. I adjusted my professional Navy suit purchased specifically for this occasion and tried to calm my racing heart. "Nervous?" asked Harriet, appearing beside me with 2 coffee cups. She handed one to me. "Drink this. It's terrible, but it'll focus you." She was right on both counts. The coffee was awful, but the bitter liquid helped center my thoughts as we found seats near the back of the main hall. The morning sessions passed in a blur of presentations and panel discussions. I participated in my intellectual property panel, offering carefully measured insights without revealing my personal situation. Several audience members approached afterward with business cards, including representatives from 2 of Sentinel's competitors. By early afternoon, it was time for Sentinel's showcase presentation. The hall filled quickly. Their session was highly anticipated, given the rumors of the Criterion acquisition. I spotted several Pentagon officials, including Colonel Matthews, seated near the front. Gerald took the stage first, his confident smile revealing no hint of the fraud he'd been perpetrating. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sentinel Defense Solutions is proud to present the next evolution in cybersecurity. The AEGIS platform has revolutionized how we protect critical infrastructure, and today we'll demonstrate capabilities that will take that protection to unprecedented levels." He paused for dramatic effect. Leading this innovation is our Director of Cybersecurity Operations and the architectural genius behind AEGIS, my nephew, Travis Woodward. Travis bounded onto the stage with the energy of a game show contestant, wearing an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide his fundamental unseriousness. The audience applauded politely. "Thanks, Uncle G." Travis grinned, immediately diminishing the professional tone. "So, cybersecurity, right? Super important stuff. Our AEGIS system is like totally unhackable. It's got algorithms and encryption and all kinds of awesome code that I personally designed." From my seat, I could see Colonel Matthews' expression harden. Several technical experts in the audience exchanged glances. Travis continued, growing more confident with each baseless claim. Today I'm going to show you some next-level features we're building into Aegis 2.0. This is classified stuff, so you're getting an exclusive preview. He turned to the large screen behind him, clicking through to a system architecture diagram that I recognized instantly as my work. This is the core system I designed using quantum-resistant protocols, and Travis faltered, clearly not understanding the technical terms on his own slides. He attempted to recover by throwing out buzzwords, blockchain, neural networks, quantum encryption, in ways that made no technical sense. The audience's initial politeness gave way to confused murmurs. Several Pentagon officials were taking notes, their expressions grim. Then came the moment that changed everything. Travis clicked to demonstrate a live system response to simulated threats. The screen showed the Aegis interface, attempting to counter a basic intrusion and failing catastrophically. Error messages cascaded across the display. That's not supposed to happen," Travis laughed nervously. "Just a demo glitch." A voice from the audience, Tom, I realized, called out, "That's not a demo glitch. The system is showing real-time vulnerability to a standard penetration test." Gerald rushed back on stage. "Technical difficulties. We'll take a short break and resume." Actually, Colonel Matthews stood, his military authority immediately commanding attention. "I have some questions about what we're seeing. These vulnerabilities appear to impact systems currently deployed in sensitive operations." The room went silent. Travis looked to Gerald in panic, but the CEO was already moving toward damage control, whispering urgently to a Sentinel executive. This was my moment. I stood, briefcase in hand, and moved purposefully toward the stage. Harriet followed, her presence adding legal weight to what came next. "Perhaps I can address those concerns, Colonel," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. As the actual creator and patent holder of the AGIS system, the room erupted in murmurs. Gerald's head snapped toward me, his face draining of color. "Jillian, this isn't the appropriate forum," he began, but I was already ascending the stage steps, Harriet at my side. "I believe it's exactly the appropriate forum," I replied, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Especially when system failures could impact national security." I turned to the audience, many of whom recognized me from my years representing Sentinel at technical briefings. For those who don't know me, I'm Jillian Parker, the original architect of the Aegis platform. Until 3 weeks ago, I led cybersecurity operations at Sentinel before being terminated for refusing to compromise system security. I connected my laptop to the presentation system, displaying my patent documentation. What Mr. Needed enter is needed. Woodward failed to mention is that I hold the core patents to AEGIS, technology patents filed in my name, not Sentinel's. The shocked reaction was immediate. Phones emerged as attendees began recording or messaging colleagues. The Criterion executives huddled together, expressions darkening. Gerald stepped toward me, voice low and threatening. "You're violating multiple confidentiality agreements. Your legal team will be busy with the SEC and Justice Department." Harriet interrupted smoothly, opening a folder. "We have documentation of financial irregularities that suggest significant fraud by senior leadership." Travis stared at the error messages still flashing on the main screen. "Uncle Gerald, what's happening?" Colonel Matthews approached the stage. "What's happening is an emergency security review. As of this moment, all Sentinel systems connected to defense operations are being placed under Pentagon oversight, pending full investigation." The Criterion executives were already moving toward the exits, one speaking urgently into his phone. Gerald made one last desperate attempt. This is corporate sabotage. She's angry about being fired and trying to damage our reputation. The system failures on screen aren't my doing, I replied calmly. They're the result of modifications made after my departure. Modifications I warned would compromise security. I displayed the internal reports documenting those warnings, followed by the Pentagon's audit findings confirming the vulnerabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the room directly, this isn't about my employment. It's about the integrity of systems protecting critical infrastructure and military personnel. I'm prepared to work with any and all clients to ensure those systems remain secure, regardless of corporate disagreements. The impact was immediate and devastating for Sentinel. By the time I left the stage, Pentagon officials were serving Gerald with papers requiring immediate system access. The Criterion representatives had departed entirely. Travis stood abandoned in the center of the stage, his moment of glory transformed into public humiliation. As I gathered my materials, a steady stream of industry leaders, government officials, and former clients approached with business cards and questions. I directed technical inquiries to my former team members in attendance, who stepped forward one by one to confirm my claims. The most satisfying moment came when the head of Northcom, Sentinel's largest military client, said simply, "We always knew who was really behind AEGIs, Miss Parker. We'll be in touch about next steps." Gerald and Travis were nowhere to be seen, having been escorted to a side room by stern-faced Pentagon officials. Harriet was already fielding calls from financial news outlets seeking comment on the collapsed Criterion deal. By evening, technology news sites were running headlines about Sentinel's presentation meltdown and the patent bombshell that had derailed a billion-dollar acquisition. My phone buzzed constantly with messages of support from former colleagues and inquiries from competitors eager to discuss my availability. Back in my hotel room that night, exhaustion finally caught up with me. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling with the delayed reaction to what I'd done. There was no going back now. I had publicly challenged one of the largest defense contractors in the country, a company with resources and connections I couldn't match as an individual. Yet alongside the fear was something stronger. The quiet satisfaction of standing up for my work, my principles, and the people who depended on the systems I'd built. Whatever came next, I had refused to be erased. My phone rang Colonel Matthews, calling from the Pentagon. "Quite a performance today, Parker," he said without preamble. "You should know we've initiated a comprehensive review of all Sentinel contracts based on the evidence presented. Thank you for taking it seriously. National security tends to focus the mind." His tone shifted slightly. "There's something else. The vulnerability in the Special Operations module? Initial investigation suggests it wasn't just incompetence. There's evidence of deliberate backdoor access being created." My blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "Nothing definitive yet. But Travis's security credentials were used to establish connection pathways that don't align with any legitimate system requirements. We're investigating whether classified information was compromised." The implications were staggering. Beyond mere incompetence, this suggested potential espionage, whether by Travis directly or someone using his access. "Keep this between us for now," Matthews continued. "But be prepared for things to escalate significantly. This just became much bigger than patent disputes." After we hung up, I sat in the darkened hotel room, processing this new development. What had begun as my personal fight for recognition now potentially involved national security breaches. The stakes were higher than I ever imagined. My laptop pinged with an incoming message. An urgent meeting request from Sentinel's board of directors for 9 the following morning. No Gerald, no Travis, just the board members who ultimately controlled the company. The message was simple. Miss Parker, in light of today's developments, the board requests your immediate attendance to discuss resolution options. I forwarded the invitation to Harriet with a simple question. Ready for round 2? Her response was immediate. They're on the ropes. Now we dictate terms. The 23rd floor of Sentinel headquarters felt both familiar and strange as I stepped off the elevator the next morning. Harriet walked beside me, briefcase in hand, her expression revealing nothing of our carefully planned strategy. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly when she saw me. Miss Parker, the board is expecting you in the main conference room. As we walked the hallway, employees stopped to stare. Some nodded respectfully. Others quickly averted their eyes. Word had clearly spread about yesterday's confrontation. The conference room door opened to reveal Sentinel's full board of directors, 8 men and 3 women, all with the polished appearance of corporate success. Notably absent were Gerald and Travis Woodward. Marcus Chen, the lead independent director, rose to greet us. Miss Parker, Miss Winters, thank you for coming on such short notice. We took our seats at one end of the long table. No pleasantries were exchanged as Marcus got straight to business. Yesterday's events have created an unprecedented situation for Sentinel. The Criterion acquisition has been suspended pending investigation. The Pentagon has frozen all defense contracts for security review. And our stock dropped 23% in after-hours trading. He slid a folder across the table. We've reviewed your patent claims. Our legal team confirms they appear valid, which creates significant complications regarding ownership of our primary technology platform. Harriet opened the folder but didn't comment, maintaining our planned strategy of letting the board reveal their position first. Another board member, Janet Foster, former tech executive, spoke next. We've also received concerning reports about financial irregularities involving Gerald Woodward. An emergency audit is underway. And most troubling, added Marcus, the Pentagon has informed us of potential security breaches that may constitute serious violations of our government contracts. I maintained a neutral expression despite my internal satisfaction at seeing the situation unfold exactly as we'd anticipated. Marcus leaned forward. Miss Parker, the board has called this meeting to discuss potential resolutions that might address these issues before they cause irreparable harm to the company. This was the opening we'd prepared for. Harriet took the lead as planned. My client holds valid patents on technology currently generating approximately 80% of Sentinel's revenue. These patents have been infringed upon systematically and knowingly. Additionally, she has been subject to wrongful termination and attempted destruction of her professional reputation. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. Under normal circumstances, we would be discussing damages in the hundreds of millions, potential criminal charges for financial fraud, and immediate cessation of all unauthorized use of patented technology. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. This was the hammer, now came the hand of reconciliation. However, I interjected, softening my tone. My primary concern has always been the integrity and security of systems that protect critical infrastructure and military personnel. I built AEGIS to save lives, not to generate lawsuits. I opened my laptop and displayed a chart showing system vulnerability increases since my departure. These security issues need immediate attention. Lives literally depend on these systems functioning properly. Janet Foster nodded. What exactly are you proposing, Miss Parker? Harriet slid our prepared document across the table. A framework for resolution that addresses ownership, leadership, and immediate security concerns. Marcus read through the document, his expression changing from concern to careful consideration. You're asking for reinstatement. Majority ownership transfer of Sentinel through stock options previously promised but never delivered, and appointment as CEO. That's correct, I confirmed. along with full investigation of Gerald Woodward's financial activities and immediate security remediation of all affected systems. And in exchange? Asked Janet. In exchange, you keep the company intact rather than watching it disintegrate under patent litigation, fraud investigations, and contract violations. Sentinel survives with its reputation damaged but recoverable. The board requested privacy to discuss. Harriet and I waited in an adjacent room, saying little. We'd presented our position, now it was a matter of how desperate they truly were. 20 minutes later, we were called back in. Marcus spoke for the group. The board has reached a preliminary decision, subject to formal vote and documentation. We agree in principle to your core demands, with certain conditions regarding transition timing and public messaging. He outlined their conditions, reasonable requests about how the change in leadership would be communicated to shareholders and clients. Nothing that compromised our fundamental position. There's one more thing, I added once he finished. Where are Gerald and Travis Woodward now? Gerald has been suspended pending investigation. He's prohibited from entering company property or accessing any systems, Marcus explained. Travis has been terminated effective immediately. And the security vulnerabilities? A team has been assembled to address them, but frankly, they need your expertise. Some of the changes made after your departure have created problems they don't fully understand. I nodded, already mentally prioritizing the systems that would need immediate attention. I'll need my original team reinstated with appropriate clearances and authority. Consider it done. We spent the next hour outlining immediate next steps. By noon, preliminary agreements were signed. By 3, I was walking through the cybersecurity division, now as acting CEO and majority owner pending final paperwork. The team's reaction was everything I could have hoped for. Applause broke out spontaneously as I entered the secure floor. Tom, Amanda, and Jake rushed forward with hugs and congratulations. Others whom I'd worked with for years offered handshakes and welcome backs. All right. Celebration later, I announced, unable to suppress a smile despite the seriousness of the situation. We have critical vulnerabilities to address immediately. The Special Operations Module is Priority 1. We worked through the night, methodically identifying and fixing the security issues Travis had created. The more we discovered, the more concerning the pattern became. Many changes appeared deliberately designed to create backdoor access changes that went beyond incompetence into potential sabotage. Shortly after midnight, Tom made a breakthrough. Jillian, I found something. These access protocols were modified to send system data to an external server. It's sophisticated, designed to look like routine diagnostic traffic. Amanda leaned over his shoulder. That server address. It's registered to a Chinese tech company. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about Travis's incompetence or Gerald's financial fraud. We were potentially looking at espionage. Perhaps unwitting on Travis's part, but devastating in its potential impact. I immediately contacted Colonel Matthews, who arrived with a cybersecurity team within the hour. By dawn, we had confirmed the breach and isolated affected systems. The investigation would continue for weeks, but the immediate security threat was contained. As morning sunlight filtered through the office windows, I finally took a moment to absorb what had happened. In just 4 weeks, I had gone from fired employee to company owner and CEO. The journey had been painful, but the outcome was beyond anything I could have imagined. My phone buzzed with a message from Harriet. Final paperwork, ready for signature. Board approved all terms unanimously. Congratulations, CEO Parker. I looked around at my team, brilliant people who had stood by me, and now work tirelessly to repair the damage done in my absence. This was what mattered, not titles or ownership, but creating something meaningful with people you respect. The coming days would bring enormous challenges: restoring client confidence, addressing financial irregularities, cooperating with government investigations. But for the first time since that early morning when security had escorted me out, I felt complete confidence in the path forward. My mother had always told me that integrity eventually finds its reward. Standing in the office that was now truly mine, watching the sunrise over a company I had helped build and now owned, I finally understood what she meant. 1 month after taking control of Sentinel Defense Solutions, I stood before the assembled company for my first formal address as CEO. The auditorium was filled to capacity, 400 employees waiting to hear how their professional world would change. "Many of you have worked with me for years," I began. "Others know me only as the person who dramatically seized control of the company you work for. Today, I want to share my vision for what Sentinel can and should be." I moved away from the podium, preferring to speak directly rather than from prepared remarks. When I built the AEGS platform, the goal was never financial success or market dominance. It was about creating systems that protect people's soldiers in the field, critical infrastructure, innocent civilians. Somewhere along the way, the company lost sight of that mission. Faces in the audience reflected a mix of emotions: hope, skepticism, curiosity. Under my leadership, Sentinel's primary metric of success will be the effectiveness and integrity of our systems. Revenue matters, we're still a business, but it cannot come at the expense of our fundamental purpose. I outlined concrete changes already underway: new transparency in client communications, elimination of artificial sales targets that incentivized cutting corners, expanded ethics training, and a whistleblower program that protected employees who raised concerns. Most importantly, I continued, we're implementing a recognition system that ensures everyone who contributes to our success receives appropriate credit and compensation. No more invisible innovators. No more taking credit for others' work. This earned spontaneous applause from the technical teams who had experienced exactly that problem. Some of you have asked about the ongoing investigations into Gerald and Travis Woodward. While I can't share details, I can confirm that both are facing serious legal consequences for their actions. The truth was more severe than most realized. The cybersecurity breach Travis had facilitated, whether through incompetence or deliberate action, had compromised classified information. Federal investigators had discovered communications suggesting he had been manipulated by foreign actors who recognized his access and ego as exploitable vulnerabilities. Gerald's financial fraud had proven extensive, with millions diverted to personal accounts over years. Both men were now dealing with federal prosecutors and the likelihood of significant prison time. But today isn't about the past, I continued. It's about building a company worthy of the trust placed in us by clients who depend on our systems for critical protection. I introduced key leadership changes: Tom as Chief Technology Officer, Amanda as Director of Security Operations, Jake as Head of Client Services, all promotions that recognize talent and loyalty rather than connections. Finally, I want to acknowledge something important. My path to this position was unconventional and difficult. I fought for recognition that should have been freely given. That experience has shaped how I intend to lead. I made eye contact with as many employees as possible. I promise you this: under my leadership, your contributions will be valued, your concerns will be heard, your well-being will matter. And together, we'll build technology that makes a genuine difference in the world. The response was a standing ovation that took me by surprise. As applause filled the auditorium, I saw in many faces the same thing I had felt during my darkest days after being fired, the fundamental human need to be seen and valued for your contributions. In the weeks that followed, we rebuilt Sentinel from the inside out. The Pentagon investigation confirmed our systems were now secure, allowing frozen contracts to resume. New clients approached us, attracted by our renewed commitment to security and ethics. Former clients returned, trust cautiously restored. We created a comprehensive education program for employees at all levels, ensuring everyone understood both the technical and ethical dimensions of our work. The days of siloed knowledge that had allowed Travis to fake expertise were over. The company culture transformed gradually, then suddenly collaborative, rather than competitive, transparent, rather than secretive. People who had worked side by side for years without really knowing each other began sharing lunches and ideas. 3 months after taking control, I received a call from Colonel Matthews. "Parker, the final security assessment is complete. Your team has not only fixed the vulnerabilities, but significantly enhanced system protection beyond original specifications." "We had excellent motivation," I replied, knowing what was at risk. The Joint Chiefs asked me to convey their appreciation personally. The breach could have been catastrophic, if not identified and contained when it was. He paused. "They'd like to expand Sentinel's role in next-generation defense systems, if you're interested." "We'd be honored, but I have one condition." "Name it." "Complete transparency. No black boxes. No compartmentalized information. Everyone involved understands what they're protecting and why." "Done," he agreed without hesitation. "We've learned our lesson about security through obscurity." After we hung up, I walked through our main development floor. Teams collaborated at whiteboards, while others tested system improvements. The energy was palpable purpose and pride, rather than fear and competition. Amanda joined me, tablet in hand with the latest security metrics. Penetration tests are all green across all modules. The new adaptive response algorithm is outperforming projections. "Excellent. How's the team handling the increased workload?" "Actually, efficiency is up 30% since we implemented the new collaborative structure. Turns out people work better when they're not afraid of having their ideas stolen." I smiled, remembering my own years of careful documentation to protect my work. Who would have thought? 6 months into my leadership, Sentinel's transformation was recognized by the industry. A leading business magazine ran a cover feature titled "The Parker Paradigm: How One Woman's Stand Transformed a Defense Contractor." The stock price had not only recovered, but reached new highs as our reputation for integrity attracted quality clients and investors. On the anniversary of my firing, I called a special meeting of the team that had stood by me through the darkest days. We gathered in the same conference room where Travis had once struggled to understand the systems he claimed to have created. "1 year ago today, I thought my career was over," I told them. "I want to thank each of you for what you did during that time. Your loyalty wasn't just to me, it was to the principles and purpose that make our work meaningful." Tom raised his coffee mug. "To Jillian, who taught us all that integrity isn't just a nice idea, it's a competitive advantage." Amanda added, "And that standing up for what's right sometimes means standing alone until it doesn't." Jake's contribution was more practical, and that always read the fine print on patent applications. The laughter that filled the room represented everything we'd built together: trust, respect, and shared purpose. Later that evening, alone in my office, the same one Gerald had once occupied, I reflected on the journey. The patents that had given me leverage now belonged to a trust that ensured the technology would always be used ethically, and that those who contributed to its development would be properly recognized and rewarded. Sentinel had transformed from a company where value flowed upward to executives into one where it flowed outward to clients and employees. We were more profitable than ever, but that was a byproduct of doing things right rather than the primary goal. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "So proud of you, honey. Dad finally called after seeing you in that magazine. Too little, too late, but thought you should know." I smiled at the irony. My father, who had abandoned us when the going got tough, now wanted connection to my success. It was a reminder of how people reveal themselves through their actions when facing adversity. The path forward wasn't without challenges. Competitors still tried to poach our talent. Government bureaucracy still complicated contracts. Technical problems still required late nights to solve. But these were normal business challenges, not existential threats or ethical compromises. What had changed fundamentally was how we faced these challenges together, with integrity, recognizing each person's contribution to our shared success. The most meaningful validation came not from market share or media coverage, but from a junior programmer who stopped me in the hallway. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said shyly. "Before you took over, I was ready to leave tech altogether. I was tired of watching men take credit for women's ideas, and connections matter more than competence. You changed that. You showed us there's another way to succeed." Her words stayed with me as I walked home that evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across the city. My personal fight for recognition had become something much larger, a blueprint for creating workplaces where merit outweighed nepotism and integrity wasn't a liability. The lesson wasn't that you should secretly secure patents as leverage, though that had certainly helped in my case. The real lesson was that your value doesn't come from titles or recognition. It comes from the integrity of your work and the courage to stand by your principles, even when the cost seems impossibly high. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought mattered to discover what actually does. In my case, losing my job had ultimately led to finding my purpose, not just building technology, but building a community where talent and ethics were properly valued. As I reached my apartment building, I paused to look back at the Sentinel headquarters visible in the distance, its windows glowing in the dusk. The building hadn't changed, but everything inside it had. Just as I had changed stronger now, more confident, but also more committed to ensuring others wouldn't have to fight the battles I had faced. True success, I'd discovered, isn't measured in dollars or titles. It's measured in the positive impact you have on the lives and work of others. By that measure, my journey from fired employee to ethical CEO was just beginning. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against unfair treatment at work? What did it teach you about your own strength and values? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need encouragement to stand their ground when facing injustice. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May we all find the courage to protect what matters most, even when it seems impossible.